Han Sen retreated without falter and stared at the frosty lake. The water in the lake suddenly arose into 1,000 airborne threads, with Han Sen as the target. Han Sen attempted to evade them, but the crystal threads were faster than Han Sen was. He summoned his flaming Rex spike and swung it towards the crystal threads that came towards him. Pang! The flaming Rex spike smacked against the threads like burning charcoal tossed into water. Many of the icy threads evaporated into steam, but there were too many and they came from every direction. They quickly wrapped around Han Sen and became entangled like a spider web. Han Sen felt as if a frosty air was beginning to invade his body. It wasn't long before the threads had wrapped him up completely, encasing him in a cocoon of sorts. His hands were tied up and he could no longer lash out with the flaming Rex spike. The silver fox wasn't doing very well, either. He kept blasting the threads with his silver lightning as much as he could. It did nothing to end their unceasing advance. Boom! A black smoke burst from Han Sen's body like fire. It instantly incinerated the icy threads that had trapped him. The flaming Rex spike in his hand was swung madly towards the remainder, burning more threads into steamy bygones. Silver Fox, this way! Han Sen shouted at the silver fox, and it quickly returned to his shoulders. Without delay, Han Sen got back to swinging his Rex spike with ferocity at the icy threads. He ran in front of the frozen man and quickly grabbed something out of his pocket. He turned, knocked out more of the threads, and hastily retreated in the direction of the bamboo forests. The threads still coursed after Han Sen, and regardless of how many he destroyed, more and more were generated by the icy lake. They were endless. The blazing fire of the flaming Rex spike was the perfect countermeasure to obliterating those he could strike down. Unfortunately, the devil unicorn beast's soul was able to withstand the threads he could not react to in time. Han Sen pondered what he had just encountered, as he had no idea what the living ice threads were. Han Sen looked out towards the lake for a while, but nothing seemed disturbed. Then, he lowered his head to take a look at what he was clutching in his hands. Han Sen had taken a wallet out of the man's pockets, and it had many cards inside. They looked very old, too. They were much bigger than modern cards and thicker. They weren't as light as the current cards were, where 100 of them could be folded together and still be really thin. There were 30 of the cards, and their thickness and number filled up the entire wallet. It looks like that man really was over 100 years old. It's possible that he spawned in a shelter somewhere in the Black Desert, stumbled into this place as I have, and fell prey to the icy threads. Han Sen observed the cards and contemplated the identity and possible story of the frozen man he had found. They were old cards, and aside from some cards that belonged to a few interstellar banking firms, Han Sen had no idea what the majority of them were for. Suddenly, Han Sen's pupils went smaller. He found a card which bore a familiar symbol, 9 Life Cat. Han Sen was shocked, not expecting to see this symbol here. That meant this man who had died near the lake may have been a member of their organization. It looks like that organization has been around for a long time. Does it really have a connection with Blood Legion? Han Sen continued to examine the rest of the cards. Then, Han Sen's eyes stretched wide. Within the cards was a working license, and on the front was something he saw clearly. Secret Service, Team Number 7. Investigator, Kim Huajian. This working license was the exact same as a relic Han Sen once received after someone died. The only difference being the name. Kim Huajian. Could he be from the Kim family? Han Sen remembered Kim Xuan once told him she had an elder who worked in the Secret Service's 7th team. Han Sen gave a strange look to the man who was sitting near the lake. If he was a member of the Qin family, what may have led him to die all the way out here? Wait a minute, is he really dead? He still has a powerful life force swirling inside him. It's not something you can fake, so is he really dead? Han Sen looked hopeful while staring at the man. Han Sen wanted to know what might have happened to the 7th team. If that man really was an elder of the Qin family, and he was still alive, Han Sen was keen to finally learn the truth. Han Sen emerged from the bamboo forest again, and he was greeted with the sudden reappearance of the icy threads. But to Han Sen, who owned 3 super creatures, they could do little to stop him. Han Sen annihilated the threads and arrived at the shore of the lake without trouble. As he went to pick up the man, he suddenly heard the sound of an explosion from the waters of the lake. Amidst the soaking turmoil and tossed water, a jellyfish-like creature arose from the waters. Under its control, the water of the lake threaded once more and viciously went after Han Sen. Han Sen was infuriated, so he raised the Rex spike to bring it down on the tentacle. But before he could strike, another tentacle grabbed a hold of his arm. The silver fox was spitting its bolts of lightning in a raging fury, doing its best to break the grip of the tentacles. But soon after, it too was grabbed. Another tentacle wrapped it up and began dragging it towards the water with its master. The silver fox's body unleashed as much silver lightning as it could, But still, it wasn't enough to break the hold the tentacle had on it. Little Angel. Hansen, unable to fight back, summoned his Adorade. The little angel appeared from the sky, swooped down, and with her greatsword, sliced the tentacles that had grabbed a hold of the duo. The jellyfish creature thrashed around in pain, letting out a shrill shriek amidst the chaos. Little Angel, great work. Go and kill that asshole. Hansen was extremely happy, and gleefully issued the little angel the order. Then, he swung his Rex spike towards the icy threads that had amassed and were coming towards him like a tidal wave. The little angel's cold face was like that of a goddess. Her blonde, flowing hair danced around as her body broke the air with her attacks. The greatsword slashed countless icy threads, as if she was tearing the seas asunder to get at the jellyfish-like creature. The little angel's greatsword delivered a great cut to the blobby jellyfish. But in the next second, the wound it suffered was immediately healed. The tentacles reached out towards the little angel, but she swung her greatsword and cut them down before they could get too close. Hansen was relieved after seeing this, but it didn't last. The tentacles regenerated into their prior shape in less than a second. The jellyfish was most certainly a super creature, for it could regenerate at an incredibly fast pace. The little angel's greatsword sliced and diced countless encroaching tentacles and delivered a number of 1-meter deep wounds to the primary host, but seemed to be to no avail. Within seconds, all the damage dealt would be nullified through the rapid regeneration and recovery of the jellyfish. Hansen looked at the flaming Rex spike in his hand and acknowledged that the fire element was what was needed to bring down the jellyfish. But the little angel was just a pet and aside from pet armor, could not make use of ordinary beast souls. Therefore, he was unable to give her his Rex spike. Hansen continued slashing the icy threads that wove across the battlefield, all the while observing the jellyfish. He was looking for a window of opportunity in which he could safely deliver an attack of his own. With good fortune, the flaming Rex spike's fiery elements would be enough to kill it. The jellyfish was enraged, however, and it did not seem afraid of getting injured. Even when the tentacles were cut, or a number of abrasions and lesions had been delivered to its body, it did not slow down in its attack of the little angel. Hansen frowned. The little angel had slashed everywhere on the jellyfish by now, and they had not yet discovered a weakness. Nothing seemed to halt the recovery of its wounds. Does it really not have any weaknesses? If that is true, then it might very well be invincible. Hansen frowned. He had previously thought something like this was impossible, but here it was, happening right before his eyes. It was at this time that the eyes of the little angel flashed. She rose up into the air, holding the greatsword with both hands, and delivered a flurry of strikes onto the jellyfish with ferocity. Under the fierce barrage of attacks the Adorade unleashed, the jellyfish's body was torn apart. After being cut in half, it dropped into the waters it had previously emerged from. "Little angel, nice work," Hansen shouted, with a voice brimming with excitement. But right after he said this, the jellyfish that had been cut in half reconnected and regenerated its lost tissue. It re-emerged from the water and grabbed a hold of the little angel with its tentacles. Hansen froze in surprise and said to himself, "Holy smokes, this guy really is invincible. How is it still not dead yet?" The little angel's attacks were powerful, but they were seemingly useless against the jellyfish. Hansen went back to trying to observe the jellyfish and discover whether or not it had a weakness. While Hansen was having trouble, his attention was brought back to the narcissus that decorated the disturbed waters of the lake. His heart was shaken. Amidst all this fighting, the flowers had not been affected one bit. Not a single petal had been damaged or fallen. Strange, the lake isn't all that big, so how has it not been affected amidst the absolute chaos that has transpired here? Hansen thought to himself as he checked the narcissus out. Hansen observed it for a while and noticed that the jellyfish was in fact protecting the narcissus. When the tentacles were cut down, they did not immediately fall into the water. When one was cut, icy threads arose from the water to carry it gently under. The jellyfish was preventing any sliced tentacles from falling on top of the flowers. Something is not right. Actually, I do not think it is the jellyfish controlling the threads. Rather, it is the narcissus themselves controlling the threads. Hansen had made a startling discovery. Is this narcissus like the blood wasp lotus? Maybe there are super creatures inside the narcissus, and the jellyfish is just a proxy. The more Hansen guessed, the more convinced he was of this. Hansen wanted to approach the ice lake and test out his theory. If things simply continued the way they were, he did not believe they could kill the jellyfish. The flaming Rex spike became a raging tornado of flame as he raced towards the flowers. The little angel struck at the same time. Her supreme greatsword tore the jellyfish in half once again, preventing it from protecting the narcissus. The narcissus that had been quiet and still the entire time suddenly turned to face Hansen. Like a volcanic eruption, the icy threads arose en masse from the water, quickly rushing over to cover Han Sen's entire body. In a moment, the threads formed together to create an iceberg inside of which Han Sen was trapped. "Get out of my way," Han Sen roared as a black smoke erupted from his body. Inside his body a bell pulsed, which made the icy threads begin to shiver and shake. The flaming Rex spike drilled onwards, forming an exit from the ice. The twirling weapon now commanded wind and fire, and the Narcissus was in its sight. The flaming Rex spike roughly drilled into the Narcissus and drilled deep. The flowers let out strange screams of their own as they suffered the wrath of the raging weapon. The petals abandoned their flowery ship as the roots of the plants were evicted and incinerated, which led to the release of a white fog all at the same time. Han Sen, who had a high frost resistance due to jade skin, felt as if he had fallen into an icy bath when touching the fog. The ice lake quickly froze over and provided an additional layer of frost to the areas surrounding it. From the perforated flower, a small body fell out. It was a beautiful woman whose body was naked. She had stunning butterfly wings attached to her back. She had long white hair and pupils that reflected the ice she governed. Snowflakes adorned her body, but the woman was tiny, no larger than the palm of a hand. She was like a fairy of myth. Han Sen did not hear an announcement, and when he looked at the fairy, he knew exactly what had happened. Without hesitation, Han Sen smacked the fairy's head with his flaming Rex spike. The palm-sized body looked as if it was going to be smashed into bits and pieces by the Rex spike. But the fairy lifted up a small fist and knocked the Rex spike away. A frosty air swiftly rose and doused the fire the flaming Rex spike commanded and froze the weapon completely. Han Sen clutched his injured hand and looked quite shocked. He thought to himself, so, this is the true body of the super creature that was birthed by this plant. Seeing the pretty yet scary fairy rise up and approach him with snowflakes around her, Han Sen summoned his peacock crossbow and fired 3 bolts. The fairy fluttered its wings like a butterfly and delicately danced away in evasion of the bolts. Then, she resumed her course and continued approaching Han Sen. Dong! The little angel rushed forward to slash the fairy, but the fairy managed to block the angel's attack with her fists, which was what produced the noise. Having her strike blocked rattled the little angel and made her fall back in a bit of a daze, but that wasn't to suggest the fairy was totally unfazed. The shock of the attack also shook the little fairy, too. The fairy had to fly in 3 circles before it could get its balance back. The fairy flew to engage the little angel and quickly circled her. Her fists generated a flurry of ice shards against the angel's greatsword as they fought. Han Sen retreated to a corner, as his power and speed were far inferior to an adult super creature's. He had no hope of joining in their fight. Now that it was no longer fighting, the silver fox quickly approached the lake. It searched for the flower that Han Sen had destroyed and noticed it was in the water. It picked it up and began eating it. "Silver fox, if you retrieve good loot, how about sharing?" Han Sen pleaded as he ran over to his pet. The silver fox noticed its master approaching and scoffed the flower down even faster. When Han Sen arrived, the leaves and roots were all gone. There was nothing left. "You selfish bastard," Han Sen angrily shouted. The silver fox returned to acting all cute and looked up at Han Sen. It jumped onto Han Sen's shoulder and no longer moved. Watching the little angel fight the fairy, without anything he could do himself, he thought now was the time to do something with the frozen man who was sitting next to the lake. He ran towards him to see if he could move him out into the bamboo forest for now. In case the little angel was unable to defeat the little fairy, at least they could escape and bring the frozen man with them. When he approached the man, Han Sen was suddenly surprised. He appeared to be thawing. Is it because the Narcissus was destroyed? Han Sen wondered as he dragged the man into the bamboo forest. The ice on the man was thawing quickly. By the time Han Sen dragged him into the bamboo forest, the ice on his body was all gone. Will he survive such a simple defrosting process? Han Sen frowned. Humans required special equipment to aid their thawing after being frozen. Because of this, Han Sen doubted he would survive. Han Sen observed the man. He watched his life force grow stronger and muscles become firmer. Perhaps he was going to live, after all. Han Sen looked at the man nervously, not fully understanding how he had managed to defrost so quickly. The man's eyes were still closed, but that was when Han Sen finally began to see movement underneath his eyelids. Nervously, he looked at the man. If he really was Ken Huasian, and if he woke up, the mystery would finally be explained. Then, suddenly, the man opened his eyes. The black eyes looked empty, but they were wide open. He was staring upwards. "Are you awake? Can you hear me?" Han Sen was not sure what to say, so he crouched near the man and asked these questions to see if he was fully conscious. The man moved his eyes slowly until his vision ended up on Han Sen. The moment he saw Han Sen, the man's face looked full of fright and shock. He grabbed Han Sen's arm and used all his strength in a struggle to say, "Be wary of Han Jing-jai." After the man spoke those few words, blood came out of his mouth and his body began to twitch and convulse. His eyes turned white. "Hey, is there something wrong?" Han Sen quickly held the man and put a recovery potion to his lips. But it didn't work, due to the constant spitting and oozing of blood. While the man twitched, he continued holding Han Sen's arms tight. His white eyeballs continued to stare at Han Sen, and it was as if he still wanted to say something. With a mouth full of blood, all he could do was gurgle on the claret, and not speak an audible word. The man used the last of his power in a struggle with his hand, and pointed at his pocket. Before he made another move, he straightened himself out and coughed blood, splattering Han Sen. Then he stopped moving, his eyes still open and looking at Han Sen. Han Sen's face looked ghastly, and the life force of the man before him had all depleted. He was dead. But what the man said confused Han Sen greatly. "Be wary of Han Jingjai." Why should I be wary of Han Jingjai? Did he say that to me specifically, or were those words meant for someone else? Maybe he thought I was someone else. Han Sen's heart was confused. Han Sen then reminded himself of the man's suggestion to look in his pockets, and so he rummaged through them in the hopes of finding another lead. The man's battlesuit had been crafted with a special material. Unless it was purposefully destroyed, it would resist deterioration and remain in perfect condition. Han Sen's hand found something inside the pocket, and from the touch, it felt like thin leather. It was soft and delicate, and he couldn't quite tell what animal's hide it might have come from. Han Sen pulled it out to reveal a 2-square-foot parchment of leather. Words had been written upon the page, and it looked as if they had been inked in blood. On the left side of the parchment was a symbol of the 9-life cat. On the right side of the leather, there were 2 words written in a larger font like a title. It said, "Blood Pulse." The Blood Pulse of the Blood Legion. Han Sen was surprised. Blood Pulse was a tenet of the Blood Legion. Blood Pulse contained records of the Blood Legion's doctrine and some of the mythology that composed their organization. It was only in the future that the Blood Legion became recognized as a cult, and the texts of Blood Pulse were forbidden from sale. Most of the cultists only knew certain snippets of the text, as few had seen the complete work. Han Sen was disappointed. Blood Pulse was merely a religious document pertaining to a faith he had no interest in abiding by. Therefore, this leathery document was useless to him. Han Sen still failed to understand why the man's dying act was to point at his pocket. However, is he just a fanatic cultist? Han Sen guessed as he looked over the Blood Pulse. But when he looked a bit closer, he was surprised. It wasn't merely a religious text he was holding. It was a Kai Gong. He could only view a part of it, but with his knowledge, he was able to tell it was a very mysterious Kai Gong. It was almost up to par with his jade skin. Taking a closer look, Han Sen noticed how the parchment simply explained how one might learn it. He folded it up carefully and then put it away. This was not the time to read, after all. He gave the man another search but was unable to find anything else of interest. The little angel was still fighting the fairy, and it was difficult to guess who the victor might be. Han Sen thought, when the next opportunity arose, he could tell Qin Xuan about his experience with the man, and let the family determine whether or not he really was an elder of theirs, and also see if he truly was Qin Huaizhen. After burying the fellow, Han Sen turned his attention to the battle that was still ongoing. Han Sen brought up his peacock crossbow and fired 2 bolts at the fairy. It was pointless for him to try, however, as she dodged them both with her wicked speed. But Han Sen then noticed that despite her speed and strength, she could only deal ice damage and ice damage alone. She wasn't really dealing any damage to the little angel as a result. Han Sen saw that the peacock crossbow was not working, so he summoned his flaming Rex spike. Han Sen's eyes observed the fairy's movements, activating his Dongshuan Sutra to analyze the energy flow inside her. She had a really clear energy flow, which wasn't blurry in the least. She had to be a 2nd-generation super creature. Han Sen's interest in the foe catapulted to a far greater level, and he wanted to kill her right away to obtain the life geno essence she possessed. But his interest did hit a certain snag. He thought the fairy was quite cute and pretty, and she most certainly looked like something no one else would be willing to kill. The little angel didn't have the mind of a human, and so she just kept on swinging her greatsword fiercely in a bid to cut the fairy down. Han Sen then took to memorizing her energy flow and learning her every move. After trying it out, his energy became like ice. It was a pure ice power. After another while of watching, the window of opportunity he had been searching for arose. The moment the fairy was smacked by the little angel's greatsword, Han Sen had his flaming Rex spike on a collision course with her as well. The elephant's trumpeting sounded within, as the Rex spike now hosted a boundless power. The fairy's small body was knocked away like a little ball, but she did not catch on fire. This was because of her icy powers, which managed to withstand the flames carried by the wreck's spike. The fairy was furious at Han Sen and soared over to him with rapid wing flaps. Han Sen turned around to run as he had just used Elephant Wreck's strike. Now that his body was drained of energy, he couldn't fight back. But knowing that move didn't kill the fairy, he quickly became aware that no matter what he tried, he'd be unable to defeat her. The little angel cut off the fairy's advance and Han Sen, with the silver fox, ran off through the bamboo forest. He was now well aware that there was no point in remaining where he was. He wanted to leave, recover, and later come back to try to fight her again. Fortunately, the little angel had come between them, which prohibited the fairy from following Han Sen. All the fairy could see was the aggravator fleeing into the bamboo forest and completely disappearing. But she wasn't keen to give up just yet. The fairy evaded the little angel's next couple of attacks, flew around her, and went to follow. Han Sen did not stop running, wanting to get outside as fast as he could. He rushed through the subterranean forest to where he had first descended, and as he neared the exit, he caught sight of the twin-tailed scorpion munching on bamboo, and the silkworms within. Why am I so unlucky this time? Han Sen's heart sank. Despite the fact that the fairy continued to chase him, Han Sen still decided to push on and make his escape. After all, the twin-tailed scorpion was only a first-generation super creature, as opposed to the second-generation one that lusted for his blood. Han Sen wanted to escape the underground labyrinth, first and foremost. Despite being drained of energy, he still had to keep his gene lock open to enable his flight. He just hoped the twin-tailed scorpion would not be made aware of his presence. But Lady Luck did not smile on Han Sen, for the scorpion noticed him. With its gnashing pincers, it did not wait a single moment before racing towards him. Han Sen gritted his teeth as his heart kicked into overdrive. The power in his arms was focused. He leapt into the air like a sparrow in the breeze, and spun around doing loops to dodge the scorpion's tail sting and pincer snap combo. After launching right over the scorpion's head and successfully evading his foe's attack, Han Sen remained airborne in his flight towards the exit. As he flew, he returned and redeployed the little angel, hoping that the scorpion would turn its attention to her and engage her for a while. The scorpion, however, let out a wheezy shriek and turned around to continue its pursuit of Han Sen. The wag of its legs and pincers were incredibly fast, and it skittered so quickly it might as well have sprouted wings. The fairy had caught up now, as well, and it didn't even blink at the scorpion. All she did was fly past it, wholly fixated on Han Sen. Today is not a good day. How can I be this unlucky? The scorpion was still on him, though, and it managed to sting his buttocks more than a few times with its tail. Luckily, he was still clad in his berserk super armor, and this provided the protection he very much needed. Although the tail's stinger managed to pierce through the plate, the subsequent damage was significantly reduced, and the literal pain in his ass just made him shout. Zhu Yume had waited 2 whole days for Han Sen's return, but he had yet to show up. She was as mad as she was sad at his absence. Asshole, horny bastard, scumbag. I can't believe he just left me hanging like that. I curse him to be eaten by creatures. Zhu Yume's spirits had rarely dipped so low, and so she just lay slouched on the bench outside the shelter's gates. Being alone for over a year had taken its toll on Zhu Yume, and her brief interaction with Han Sen made her realize how afraid of being alone she now was. Meeting him was an extremely rare stroke of luck, and although she wasn't particularly fond of his character, his presence still enthused her. At least she did not have to remain under the desert's baking sun, alone. Even arguing with the bad guy was better than being alone, bored to death. What was worse was the fact he had just left without saying a single word. Her eyes were now swelling red at the thought of no goodbye. As Zhu Yume cursed him to high heaven, she suddenly saw the man running towards her with extreme speed. It made her overjoyed, and she immediately stood up and shouted to Han Sen, "Mr. Asshole. I thought you were gone for good. What brought you back?" Han Sen removed his armor and approached Zhu Yume like the wind. He didn't say anything to her, he just grabbed her by the waist and carried her inside the city. "You sick pervert, let me go." Zhu Yume was a little embarrassed and tried to shout as she struggled. "Take a look at what is following me. Do you really want me to leave you as their lunchtime snack?" Han Sen casually told her as he continued to run forward. Zhu Yume then took a proper look, and she saw the twin-tailed scorpion that ravenously followed. She also saw the little angel further behind, but not the fairy. The fairy was too small for her to see from that distance. But Zhu Yume quickly understood what was happening, and her face changed as swiftly as one could turn a page. She said, "Big brother, run faster." The scorpion waved its tail as it approached, trying to sting them, and Zhu Yume's heart leapt at the creature's every attempted strike. With each dodge, a gasp and a tear or two would follow. Han Sen didn't have the time to respond, and simply rushed into the shelter. He turned around to take a look and noticed that only the scorpion had followed them inside the city. The fairy seemed wary of something and stopped pursuing them near the gate. She flapped her wings in the air but did not go inside. This turn of events made Han Sen happy. If he only had to deal with the scorpion, he could manage, and he would no longer be forced to run for his life. Han Sen ran towards the plaza and simply waited for his little angel to deal with the scorpion. Meow. Little Orange saw Zhu Yume getting chased by the scorpion, and it growled angrily in response. With rage, it rushed towards the creature to engage. Little Orange, Zhu Yume worriedly called out. Although Little Orange had jumped onto the scorpion, the foul creature lived up to its namesake and spread its tail in two. With both ends, it stabbed Little Orange, making the cat cry out in pain. Please save him. Little Orange cannot fight the scorpion. He used to run off whenever we saw it in the past. Zhu Yume was dribbling tears as she pleaded for Han Sen's aid. Han Sen did not make a move, but the silver fox acted on his behalf and spat out a bolt of silver lightning to nastily strike the scorpion's head. The scorpion was shaken by the lightning, and Little Orange managed to free itself. But then, Little Orange sunk its teeth into one of the scorpion's tails and made a hissing sound. As it writhed in pain, the twin-tail scorpion raised its other tail and took aim at Little Orange's head. When the little angel finally arrived, she swung her greatsword down on the scorpion's head under Han Sen's command. The shell of its head cracked open as green fluid squirted out of the crushed carapace. It wagged both of its tails, attempting to shake off Little Orange and the silver fox that clung onto it with their teeth. But it was to no avail, as their teeth had been driven deep and they had a firm grip. In one final attack, the little angel clutched the greatsword's hilt with both hands and drove it down right through the head of the scorpion, pinning it to the ground. The scorpion, as it slowly slipped into the embrace of death, waved its tails quicker than ever and managed to shake Little Orange and the silver fox off. With a few final twitches, it gave up the ghost. Super creature hunted, twin-tailed purple scorpion. The beast's soul has not been acquired. The flesh of this creature is inedible, but you may harvest its life geno essence. Consume its life geno essence to obtain a random numeric amount of super geno points, ranging from 0 to 10. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss the next chapter.